Hey, what's up everybody? Today, the 15th of August, is the birthday anniversary of the late Paul Rand, the most famous and iconic graphic designer of all time. We wanted to honor this anniversary by taking a look at Rand's life and career and introduce you to this pioneer of design and hopefully inspire you to go out there and study his work and read some of his books on design. There's no way we're going to be able to cover everything in one video, but we will do our best to hit some of the highlights. Let's get started. The year is 1914, Brooklyn, New York. Paul Rand was born as Peretz Rosenbaum. That's right, guys. He changed his name to Paul Rand later on in his career, but more on that later. Between 1929 and 1934, he studied at the Pratt Institute, Parsons School of Design, and the Art Students League. Yet despite this, he considers himself self-taught. And in a visit to no other than Art Center, the school I graduated from and taught at, he mentioned that he learned design by looking at other people's work, as schools back then weren't teaching good design according to him. He taught himself by observing the work of European greats like Cassandra, and was often inspired by the work found in design magazines like Gerbrush Grafik, which actually still exists today but renamed Novum magazine. His career started at a very young age. It can be distinctly divided into three main parts with some overlapping here and there. The first is the editorial part. Rand started his career creating stock graphics for a syndicate that sells them to magazines and newspapers. But his major calling in editorial came when Esquire and Apparel Arts, now GQ, trusted him with their art direction at the young age of just 23. Can you believe that? Rand quashed any suspicion about his art directorship with a number of astounding covers created for Apparel Arts that showcased his mature design skills and established him as a first-rank designer. His most notable editorial work, however, was a series of covers he did for a relatively small magazine called Direction, where he had total creative freedom. The covers were revolutionary and a far cry from the editorial style of those times. He drew inspiration from modern art movements and made this amazing link with graphic design applications, giving birth to timeless covers. Just look at this. Now, it was during this editorial phase of his career that Rand devised the persona that is Paul Rand, changing his name from Peretz Rosenbaum in what Peter Behrens considers to be Rand's first and most enduring corporate identity. The second part of Rand's career is the advertisement part. In 1941, and for 13 years, Rand became the art director of William H. Weintraub's advertising agency. Rand's work during this phase can still be seen in the use of symbols that convey multiple meanings, as well as the spirit of wit in today's advertisements. Before Rand, there was a big emphasis on copy, and you would see ads with loads of copy and minimal use of visuals. And when you see visual-focused ads, more often than not, they were very cluttered. Paul Rand, influenced by the European style of design, approached ad design in a radically different way. He saw graphics and type as a continuum. When done right, coherence between the two can be achieved. He minimized the role of copy to its essentials to breathe space into his designs and maximize its relation to the graphics producing ads, where graphics and type act as one unit conveying the message of the ad, while at the same time injecting elements of art, beauty, and even wit, all in service of selling the product. You can particularly see the execution of these principles in his terrific ads for Mr. Disney hats, an amazing pairing of graphics and type, hugely contributing to the main goal of the ad, which is to showcase the product. You can also witness the signature style of Paul Rand in the wonderfully playful ads for Coronet Brandy, for which he also designed the logo. And if you paid attention to his work so far, you'll see that almost always Rand signed his work, similar to what an artist does with his paintings. And when asked about this by Stephen Heller, Rand responded, "I signed simply as a way of publicizing myself." We have now reached the third part of Rand's career, and arguably the longest and most known publicly, and that is corporate design. Rand is responsible for some of the biggest corporate identities to this day, and his logos often endured for decades, many of which still are in use today. Rand's major breakaway in the corporate design world came in 1956 when IBM's Watson Jr. hired Elliot Noyes to create an all-encompassing corporate design program for IBM. One of Elliot's first decisions was to hire the services of Paul Rand to redesign their corporate logo, among many other design contributions over the following years. Rand introduced the IBM logo in 1956, using the same letters and form we know today, sans the stripes. but Rand was bothered by the rhythm the letters created, considering the I a light width letter, the B as a medium width, and the M the widest. It created this ascending rhythm, and it didn't go well with him. He worked on solving this issue for years, and he came up with a 13-stripe version of the IBM logo in 1967, with the 8-stripe version that's still in use today following in 1972, making the IBM corporate logo one of the longest enduring logos still in use today. Among his other major logo designs that stood the test of time include Colorform's logo in 1959, Westinghouse logo in 1960, ABC, Cummins, both in 1962, and the AIGA logo, just to name a few. And guys, there's a really interesting article online by Morningstar founder Joe Mansueto recalling the events working with Paul Rand on their new logo in 1991. But not every great work of Paul Rand can still be seen today. Notable examples include the excellent UPS logo created in 1961. It was discontinued in 2003. Enron's logo in 1996, one of the last he worked on, and Yale University Press logo in 1985, which Yale phased out starting in 2009. Rand also taught at Yale, among other universities, for decades. But perhaps Rand's most famous client was none other than Steve Jobs, for which Rand created the NeXT logo in 1986. Steve had just left Apple and started his new computer company, soon to be known as NeXT. And he didn't want another logo type for his new company. He was inspired by logos that contain symbols that can be used independently of the logo type, similar to what Apple had. The problem, however, was that to be able to use a symbol independently of the name of the company, it usually takes many years and tens of millions of dollars to associate them together. And Paul Rand solved that problem by making Steve a logo that contained the name of the company within the symbol itself.
Don't look at the back first. This is the front. And don't get scared. This is not the design.
Steve talks in an interview on how Rand approached this challenge as a problem that had to be solved rather than an artistic challenge for its own sake. This, among many others, showed the distinct philosophy Paul Rand had regarding logo design. He often approached logo design as a business problem that needs to be solved, refusing to give clients several logo options. In an interview with Miggs, he gave an ingenious analogy of how when you go to the doctor, he doesn't give you options. He gives you the solution to your problem. You pay for it, and then it's up to you whether or not you take it and become better or not. And Rand did the same with Steve Jobs and his other clients. Rand was an avid defender of simplicity in design on the condition that a terrific idea was in place. He didn't conform to trends and being fashionable, and often quoted Ludwig Mies saying, "Don't try to be original, just try to be good." He believed that logos don't have to illustrate what the business does or represent, and that they become meaningful only after being used, seen, and associated with the business. Another unique trait of Rand's logo design is the way he presents his logos. He prints out these brochures, as he calls them, and they're small booklets that show the evolution and progression of the logo, and they are simply a masterclass in logo presentation and explaining the rationale behind some of the decisions taken while creating the logo. There's a wonderful snippet on YouTube of Paul Rand unveiling the NeXT logo to Steve Jobs and a bunch of NeXT employees that you should go check it out. But I also wanted to give you a quick look from one of these booklets, and it's for Education First back in 1994. It's one of the highest resolution ones we could find and is a nice little journey through Rand's rationale behind his work. Keep in mind, guys, EF is an international education company that specializes in language learning. Now, this is important to know to kind of make sense of the decisions Rand made. So let's take a look. This is the front cover, and you will see in a second how this cover sets up the tone for what comes next. Page 1 is for the title, and you can see his clean design aesthetics and use of contrast we talked about earlier. I would imagine if the back of the front cover was also white, it would have been much less interesting. In the next page, Rand gives a small explanation on what a logo is and what should be expected of it. That's really important because you have to keep in mind that these logos aren't just presented to a company's in-house design department or marketing department. There's usually a number of top management and department heads present in the presentation, and this short explanation helps by managing the expectation levels through educating those who aren't very familiar with the creative process. Then he shows some of the exploration he came up with and explains why they were abandoned because they didn't serve the purpose of the logo's use in the best possible way. In the next page, you'll see the shape that Rand goes on to describe as the embryo of a graphic idea. Next, Rand introduces the final iteration he settled on and explains how this sound wave pattern serves as an important decorative and mnemonic purpose. In addition, adding an organic feel to the logo provides a contrast to the straight lines of the letters. In the next page, Rand explains how best to partner the logo with accompanying text. And in the next 3 pages, Rand explains how important it is to pay attention to design elements like logo size, logo positioning, point size, margin dimensions, and paper material and weight. He emphasizes the importance of treating the logo with the same respect you wish your company to be looked upon, and you see Rand finishing off in the same elegant way he started. These booklets made the experience of presenting logos completely different for the receiver. It turned it into an interactive journey. You feel like you're unwrapping a gift with your own hands. Paul Rand did this 3, 4, and 5 decades ago, and the way he presents this information is just as clean and relevant today as it was decades ago. This is what we talk about when we say that design should aim to be timeless. Of course, Rand's influence in corporate design isn't limited to coming up with an ingenious logo. He pioneered all aspects of corporate design and often turned mandatory aspects of a company's business into opportunities to inject some design genius. The best examples of this are the annual reports all public companies are required to publish every year.
The content of an annual report, design content, but today the state of typography is in pretty bad shape.
Rand saw this as an opportunity to showcase the company's identity and turn what is usually a dull document into an interesting read. Rand also perfected the art of the package. He had profound ideas on how to treat materials, shapes, and graphics. He thought the designers shouldn't only aim to convince the hand nor please the eye, but to, however lightly, touch the emotions and gratify the human spirit. You can see that Rand never took any aspect of design lightly, and it shows in his brilliant packaging designs for IBM and Westinghouse, among others. He transformed product packages that are usually boring and generic and turned them into beautiful pieces of design and a worthy extension of the company's identity right in the customer's hands. If you think that's the extent of Rand's talents, you better think again. Rand was also an amazing painter, having worked on over 100 book covers and even a movie poster. Paul, together with his first wife Anne, published 4 children's books. Anne did the writing and Paul the drawings. They also designed their home in Connecticut in 1953, a modern masterpiece that minimizes friction with its surroundings. The Rand House received many accolades and was considered one of the 10 best houses of 1953 by Interiors magazine. Had enough? I didn't think so either. Rand also has 4 main brilliant books on design that give us a glimpse into his mind. And don't get me started on his posters. Throughout Rand's career, he produced timeless posters that still resonate with graphic designers to this day. Just look at these. Oh, and this brilliant poster for IBM, which is one of Steve Jobs' favorite pieces of work by Paul Rand. This poster has a funny story, as IBM didn't really want to adopt it in their identity at first, and only did so over the years to the extent where today, if you go to IBM's website in their favicon, which is the tiny picture next to the website name in the browser tab, they're using the B. How cool is that? Paul's work has been a beacon of inspiration for many great designers, past and present. His style and teachings have been referenced and talked about by the likes of Lou Danziger, whose Rand's book, Thoughts on Design, helped him clarify many design issues on his mind, and Emmy Award-winning title designer Kyle Cooper, who actually studied under Rand. Rand's mark and influence can be seen in many creatives' work, and of course the list goes on and on. And after more than 6 decades of design genius, at the age of 82, Paul passed away in 1996. In his last year, Rand gave us 4 logos and published his last book, From Lascaux to Brooklyn. Paul Rand, who Steve Jobs describes as having a slightly tough exterior but a teddy bear on the inside, truly is the complete artist. He was self-taught, left a mark on the editorial stage from a very young age, conquered the advertising world, and simply pioneered corporate design. He painted, taught, wrote books, and most importantly, he inspired. His work had the power to change industries, outlive media, and endure for decades as if it were created only yesterday. He believed that it's a designer's job to improve the general quality of life. In fact, he called it the only reason for our existence. These are the marks of a legendary designer, and it is why so many designers look up to him and consider him the most famous graphic designer of all time. I hope this journey through Mr. Rand's career inspired you to go out there and look him up, and get to know his work better. You can find everything we showed and talked about in this video and much, much more online. I encourage you to study the work and life of the design greats like Paul Rand, who set the foundations for contemporary art and design that we all take for granted today. That's it for me in this video. I will see you in the future. Happy birthday, Mr. Rand.